The March 4th, 2020 meeting of the Windsor Planning Commission will now come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Cindy Showerman.
Here.
Daniel Foreman.
Present.
Jerry Bushelman.
Here.
Gail Schick.
Present.
Victor Talon.
Present.
Kelly Hall. Here.
First item on tonight's agenda is review of the agenda itself by the Planning Commission for any items or additional business to be added to the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the agenda as written. Second.
It is moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Bushelman, that we accept the agenda as presented. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Let's try one more time.
There we go.
There we go. And the answer is?
Try one more time.
You want to reword or something?
Or reset it.
Did you vote?
I did. I think it reset it. Okay, vote again.
Yes.
And motion carries unanimously.
It works.
There we go.
Next item on the agenda is public invited to be heard. If there was anyone in the audience who has an item that they wish to present to the commission that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time to do so. If you do have something you wish to present, you will have a 3-minute time frame to give the information to us. There will be a red, yellow, green light indicator on the podium, and once you get to where there's 30 seconds left in your 3 minutes that is allocated, the yellow light will come on to warn you of the 30-second time frame that is left. So if there's anyone who wishes to give us any information that's not on tonight's agenda, now's the time to do so. Seeing there's nobody beating feet up here, we'll go on to the next item. Under the consent calendar, we have the approval of the minutes of the February 19th, 2020 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of the February 19th.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Foreman, that we accept the minutes as presented. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And motion carries unanimously. Moving into the board action items, we will now close our regular meeting, open up a public hearing for the first item, which is Overland 368 annexation. Paul, it's your show tonight. You got the floor.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, thank you. I notice you have 2 items on the agenda tonight that are quasi-judicial public hearings. This particular item, the hearing you just opened, as well as item 4 on the agenda with respect to the PUD overlay. With respect to both of those, I'd like to disclose that I'm a sitting member of the town board, that I'm here in my capacity as a non-voting liaison to the Planning Commission. Although I will be present during this public hearing, I will not be giving my opinion or participating in the discussion. I will not let tonight's proceedings influence or affect my review of this matter when or if it comes before the town board. I will make my decision at the town board level based solely on the evidence presented during that town board public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Planning Commissioners. This annexation has been reviewed in accordance with Article 1, Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code. The subject property is located between State Highway 257 and 15th Street to the northwest of Windsor Lake and Lake Osterhout. The applicant has submitted a petition to annex approximately 173 acres to the town with an initial zoning of residential mixed use, or RMU. The applicant has also submitted a master plan which depicts the general layout of the site, as well as a rezoning application to create a planned unit development, or PUD overlay zoning. The property is identified as single-family residential on the land use plan within the comprehensive plan. The surrounding uses are largely undeveloped agricultural land, and to the south, including agricultural and associated housing. To the west is the town's new public works facility. The comprehensive plan includes a growth strategy, which identifies this property as within a secondary growth area, which is described as land that lies outside the primary growth area. It includes areas within the town's boundaries and the GMA, growth management area. Development of these sites will require careful planning to ensure newly annexed areas can be served by town infrastructure. The annexation plat itself is on the screen. I think more importantly to understanding the project is the master plan, as well as the illustrative version of the master plan submitted by the applicant. The project proposes a maximum of 691 dwelling units, which is consistent with the land use designation of single-family residential density of 4 units per acre. There is a mix of single-family detached and single-family attached units proposed on the master plan. It includes a 12-acre school site, which is on the easternmost portion, planning area 4. It's the blue square. There's approximately 7.5 acres of roads and other miscellaneous uses. There would be an extension of Weld County Road 70 between 257 and 15th Street associated with the development and providing access to the development. There are 44 acres of open space and drainage areas, including an open space corridor for drainage and trail. You can see kind of running right through the middle of the property. And there's also a town trail required, which would connect 15th Street and 257. The site is not currently served by Windsor Water or Sewer Services, so future development would require extension of those utilities and would be the responsibility of the developer at that time, with, as always, a possibility for reimbursement for any oversizing of utilities or streets serving or adding capacity to the network. An annexation report is attached to your materials. Details the provision of utilities, maintenance of infrastructure, as well as a statement from the school district. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting in February of 2019, and the summary of that meeting is included as well. Public notice was sent to surrounding property owners in accordance with the code, as well as the Colorado statutes regarding annexation. The public hearing dates of tonight, March 4th and March 9th, were set by Town Board on January 27th of this year. The proposal is in general conformance with the comprehensive plan. The Chapter 5B growth framework, the goal focuses on future growth that's fiscally environmentally responsible, which this proposal is in conformance with. The objective regarding new neighborhoods close to the core of town, this proposal is approximately a mile north of downtown. The residential areas framework plan, the goal talks about diverse housing for varying families, family needs of different sizes, lifestyles, income, etc. And the PUD that's associated with this master plan does allow for a range of lot sizes, as small as 2,500 up to 6,600 square feet, which can help meet varying housing needs. The next objective regarding multimodal connectivity, as mentioned, there would be a town trail through the site and connection with County Road 70 to the east and west. And regarding Chapter 7, Community Facilities and Infrastructure, the development would be responsible for extension of sewer, water, and the street network. The application is also consistent with the strategic plan. As mentioned, the infrastructure will be provided. Quality of life mentioned in the strategic plan with the 12-acre school site, open space, and regional trail. Those are all contributing factors to quality of life. And downtown, again, with close proximity to downtown, this additional homes should help support downtown businesses. Staff requests the following records be entered into the record: application, petition, supplemental materials, any testimony received, staff memo, supporting documents, and the recommendation. With that, staff recommends Planning Commission forward to Town Board a recommendation of approval of the annexation and zoning designation, subject to any outstanding Planning Commission and staff comments being addressed. And the master plan recommendation, staff recommends Planning Commission forward to Town Board a recommendation of approval of the master plan, subject to any outstanding Planning Commission and staff comments being addressed. And lastly, the review criteria. As a reminder, annexation is a discretionary act by Town Board. The proposal is in compliance with the Annexation Act of 1965 and is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Do want to note the applicant and representatives are present should you have questions for their team.
Anything, Paul, does the applicant have a presentation they have to present or anything like that? Okay. Since this is the public hearing portion of the process, is there anyone in the audience who has any questions or comments pertaining to this agenda item? And if so, if you just raise your hand and I'll... Yes, sir, if you could come to the podium, give us your name and address. And you'll have a 3-minute time frame.
No problem. Mark Rogers, live at 1139 Fairfield Avenue, which is just south of the area that's being annexed. I just learned about this a couple weeks ago. And just a couple of questions. It looks like they're on page 7 of the master plan, planning on tapping into 11th Street main for water. And on page 8, they look like they're have a drainage coming right across the street from where my house is. So just curious as to is there any impact on that water main having enough capacity? And if they expect any significant discharge from that drainage on page 8.
Does the applicant want to answer that?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. My name is Stephanie Thomas. I'm with Northern Engineering. And do you need my address?
Yeah.
Okay, 2509 Farnell Road, Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay, thank you.
So the resident is correct that there is a significant off-site drainage basin that is being rerouted to its historical location through our site. Thank you, Paul. So currently, based on existing topography, there is a pretty large drainage basin that drains through this property. This project proposes an off-site detention pond that would attenuate, meaning it would choke down that flow to something more reasonable. So that would be off-site in the northwest corner of the project. And that would essentially knock down that very large drainage basin down to a flow that is more easily being able to be conveyed through. We do not intend on worsening any of the historic drainage patterns of the area. In fact, this off-site detention pond would actually decrease the off-site drainage by I would say 70%. It's pretty substantial knockdown of flow.
Okay.
Does that answer?
I think it does.
Did you have a comment on the water?
If you have any additional questions, could you come up to the podium? So we can get it
Oh,
for the
yes,
record?
and he did ask about the water main. And I don't know, you said it's coming from 11th Street. I do see, and I apologize if I don't know the names of the streets here, I do see a water main connections near Weld County Road 15 and a proposed connection near Weld County Road 17. Oh, and I do. Yeah, that water line connection to the south is proposed with this development as well. I apologize if I'm a little behind on this. I'm filling in for a colleague, so.
Okay. Anything else that you have to answer the question, or?
No,
Okay,
thank you.
okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the audience? If you could come to the podium, sir.
You want my name and such?
Your name and address?
Eric Brenneman, current address 5403 Carmont Drive. I'm a property owner to the east of 257 along this proposed annexation, I guess. And there is an historical irrigation supply ditch that runs all the way up from the corner of 15th Street and 72. And cuts across, which at one point in time is going to be called the Takakala subdivision, enters Zeta's property on the east side, I mean on the north, but on the east side. It cuts through her property, cuts through a couple other properties. It services the Brenneman farm on the south side. And is there anybody even give any thought about how we're going to keep that up? Because it looks like it's going to turn into a 12-acre school site.
Okay. Again, I'll look to the applicant to answer that.
Eric Steidel, 9750 County Road 78, Fort Collins. The ditch that Mr. Brenneman mentioned already has an existing easement, so future development will have to take into account existing easement on the land.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Move to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend we include all, excuse me, commission comments and questions prior to closing the public hearing.
Yeah, is there any comments or questions from the commission?
I've got a couple for
Okay.
staff. On the colored slide, it shows a pretty good chunk that isn't part of this project, but that is between the project and part of that County Road 70 road extension.
This area?
Yeah, right there. And I was just curious, it looks like that's maybe a piece that's already been annexed into the town, but I wasn't sure how that coordinated with this project and that road extension.
Right, so that parcel you referenced is part of the Takakala development or property that's to the north of, mostly to the north of County Road 70. So there will need to be coordination between property owners to get that road built.
So that's not part of this project?
I guess that they'll need to provide access via County Road 70. The exact details of that would be worked out with the subdivision plating.
Okay. Any other questions, Cindy?
Yeah, and then what access points would this project have as far as, I mean, obviously County Road 70 would be access points, but would there also be potential traffic flow onto 15th Street and a north 7th Street onto the highway?
So you're correct. County Road 70 is the main access point with kind of this looping road. There is a proposed access on State Highway 257 and in this vicinity around the school site. It'd most likely be a limited access, and it's obviously controlled by CDOT. And again, once they get to the plating phase, that would be determined in more detail. And that there's no further access on 15th that's proposed other than 70.
Thank you.
Anything else, Cindy?
Nope,
Any other
So-
questions, comments?
So the irrigation ditch that you were talking about that you have an easement for, is that in fact going through the school property, the irrigation ditch?
It's on the, would be on the western boundary.
Could I get you to come up to the podium, and give us your answer, just for the records, so we can have it recorded?
Is it this right here?
That, Eric Steidle, 9750 County Road 78, Fort Collins. The ditch that you mentioned is generally here. So yes, it does come across that planning area 4,
Okay.
if that answers your question.
Well, that kind of brings up another question for myself, as far as the ditch coming across that parcel, that's the parcel for the school, correct?
Yes, sir.
So how would that be handled?
I would,
Very carefully, I guess?
I presume they would put it in pipes so it's no longer
Put it
above
underground?
ground.
But
But,
that
um,
would be something that you would pay for?
The developer would.
Okay, the developer would
Yes.
pay for that. That wouldn't be the responsibility of the irrigation company.
No, that's a lateral that only services Mr. Brenneman's farm. There's no other water that runs down there.
Okay.
Okay. That answers my question. Any other questions, comments from the commission?
I have another question.
Okay.
So the school letter, the letter from the school, I guess, right? So I don't, when it says recommendation, I don't quite understand what they're saying. To me, it doesn't sound like a recommendation. Can you go back and look at the,
You want to bring that up, Paul?
You want me to pull the letter up?
Yeah, if you would.
just, when I read the recommendation, I guess it didn't sound to me like a recommendation, and I just wanted to see what I was missing.
I don't actually have access to it on this computer. I can pull it up on my laptop to have it in front of me to,
If you could just read it again, or something, I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I can comment generally that
Okay.
the town and the school district have an intergovernmental agreement where we work together to make sure the district's needs are met with school sites and things like that. And there has been some dialogue with the town, the applicant, and the school district, I think, to get to the current proposal where there's a 12-acre site.
Right.
And my impression from the school district is that was satisfying with their requirements.
Okay. Does anybody have it?
I have it here. So it's basically saying that the school district remains concerned about residential activity and the ensuing enrollment that will follow, as well as the district's physical and financial abilities to serve that growth. The district believes the proposed school site is adequate for an elementary school once the site meets all the terms of the IG with the town of Windsor. In addition, the school district requests to be notified of any proposed land use changes associated with this application.
I would also add that kind of first paragraph, that they remain concerned about growth, that's
Right.
a standard comment that they include with
Okay. Okay.
every application they see is,
Saying there.
there are challenges with the continued growth for them,
Yeah.
obviously, and,
Okay.
but that comment wasn't unique to this particular
Okay,
proposal.
it seemed like it talked about the middle school and the high school, and then it didn't refer to it in there.
It's in the packet.
Page 20 and 21 of your packet, if
in
you've
the
got it
packet.
pulled up.
I know. Okay.
I think it just basically addresses that there is a concern.
If there's a concern,
One of
we'll
the-
say that and nothing
Yeah,
changes. Okay.
exactly. So, any other comments, questions from the commission? We do have a motion on the floor from Mr. Talon to close the public hearing.
I would second that motion.
Been moved by Commissioner Talon, seconded by Commissioner Showerman, that we close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Punch in that comes up, it goes down again.
And the motion carries unanimously, finally. We will now reconvene our regular meeting, moving on to the next agenda item, which is the recommendation of the town board for the Overland 368 annexation. Paul?
Nothing further to add.
Okay. Comments, questions from the commission?
I would move to forward a recommendation to the town board of approval of the Overland 368 annexation, subject to the recommendations of staff to complete addressing comments.
Second.
And moved by Commissioner Showerman, seconded by Commissioner Tellen, that we forward a recommendation of approval to the town board of the annexation and zoning designation, subject to any outstanding planning commission and staff comments being addressed. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is a recommendation to the town board for the Overland Master Plan. Anything further, Paul?
Sorry, which agenda item are we on? C3?
Number 3, yeah.
Yeah, nothing further at this time.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the commission?
I would just add the comment that, while I know this isn't part of the master plan step, to just make sure as this moves forward, we're very cognizant of the impacts on traffic that that's going to have on North 7th Street as well as on 15th Street, and that those are being adequately addressed, since even though those access points are all going to be on the County Road 70, that road only has those two places to spill over to. So. Otherwise, I'd move to recommend to the town board approval of the Overland Master Plan.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Commissioner Showerman, seconded by Commissioner Tellen, that we forward it to the town board a recommendation of approval of the master plan, and subject to the traffic issues that Cindy identified. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And the motion carries unanimously. Okay, we will now close our regular meeting, open up a public hearing for Overland 368 PUD rezoning overlay. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This rezoning request has been reviewed in accordance with Article 5, Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code. So the annexation that you just recommended approval of included the RMU zoning, which would stay in place as the base zoning, with the PUD serving as an overlay with additional standards. The planned unit development is covered in municipal code, and the code talks about providing flexibility in land planning and also permitting more intense use of land where there's well-related open space and recreational facilities integrated into the overall design. Again, this property is located between 15th Street and State Highway 257. Zoning to the north of the property, SF1, as well as RMU, with property to the south in unincorporated Weld County. To the east is RMU, and west the open space for the town facility, as well as RMU for the Windshire neighborhood. The PUD allows for more intense residential development than is otherwise allowed under the municipal code by providing for reduced lot sizes and reduced building setbacks. Despite this higher intensity allowed by the PUD, the overall density of the subject property would not exceed the 4 units per acre permitted by the single-family residential depiction in the comprehensive plan. And the higher intensity will allow for clustering of development while preserving approximately 45 acres of open space and drainage and a 12-acre school site. The PUD does include design standards that exceed the municipal code standards. There are the intent is in creating a high-quality public realm and streetscape. There are some key requirements, including standards for open space, standards to require front porches on homes, garage placement that minimizes their visual impact, and staggered massing of homes to create visual interest, and limits on the number of floor plans adjacent to one another to ensure to avoid monotony and create visual interest. So this on the PowerPoint screen is just an excerpt from the PUD of some of those standards in terms of different massing of the buildings, creating interest and avoiding repetition, things like that, and focusing on pushing the garages more towards the rear side of the houses to minimize their impact. The municipal code does list specific objectives for the PUD, including flexibility, encouraging unity and diversity in land development, encouraging unified and planned development without the customary subdivision into single lots. It encourages the preservation and enhancement of desirable natural landscape. After review, the proposed PUD is consistent with those objectives. The code goes into more specific detail for PUD standards. It speaks to relation to the major transportation system. As we've covered, the extension of County Road 70 and tying into the two arterials on either side of it are a key component. The relationship to public utilities and community facilities. Again, the applicant would be responsible for extension of those utility services. Also, the code speaks to the relation to general pattern of urban development and general compliance with the comprehensive plan. The PUD is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and again, the close proximity to downtown is an asset to the development and should only help downtown businesses. The proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan as well, including accommodating growth that's fiscally and environmentally responsible, new neighborhoods adjacent to the town core, diverse housing in residential neighborhoods to meet varying needs, multimodal connectivity. The neighborhood does use what could be termed traditional neighborhood design, which focuses on traditional design elements like the front porches, creating a high quality public realm and streetscape, and again fosters a diversity of housing types. The strategic plan, the proposal is in conformance with that, again regarding infrastructure, quality of life, and downtown. Notification was completed in accordance with the code requirements. So with that, staff recommends Planning Commission forward to Town Board a recommendation of approval of the PUD zoning, subject to any outstanding Planning Commission and staff comments being addressed. Staff requests the following be entered into the record: application, petition, supplemental materials, any testimony received, staff memo, supporting documents, and the recommendation. And again, the review considerations are before you that have run through. And that's all I have for you on this one.
Thanks, Paul. Since this is the public hearing portion of the process, is there anyone in the audience who has any comments, questions pertaining to this agenda item? Any comments, questions from the commission? Cindy?
Paul, just because we've looked at so many changes to the code coming up, can you just refresh my memory on what the next steps will be? Because I know it's a little different when a PUD gets approved versus when it's a standard subdivision. Can you just recap what the commission and town board would see as far as future plans for this development?
Sure, so the future plans would actually essentially follow the same path. If this were just a RMU zoning, it will come back for preliminary subdivision plat, final subdivision plat, and those would both, well, preliminary before planning commission and final before both boards.
Okay. I thought so, but I just couldn't remember if the PUD changed that at all.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
have been PUDs in the past that have tweaked those requirements.
Okay, but this one doesn't?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions from the commission?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
And moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Foreman. We close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. Motion carries unanimously. We will reconvene our regular meeting, open up the next agenda item, which is a recommendation to the town board for the Overland 368 PUD rezoning overlay. Anything further, Paul?
Nothing to add.
Anything from the commission, comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I move that we forward to the town board a recommendation of approval of the PUD zoning overlay subject to planning commission and staff comments. Second. Second.
And moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Bushelman, that we forward to the town board a recommendation of approval of the PUD zoning overlay subject to any outstanding planning commission staff concerns being addressed. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And the motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. We will close the regular meeting, open up a public hearing for land use code updates. Paul, you still got floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've been working on code update for a few years now, and we're happy to have this ordinance ready for town board after your recommendation this evening. This is part of the larger update, and there will be subsequent updates in the coming year. This particular update focuses mostly on the zone districts and the standards for development within those zone districts. One of the main concepts is it creates more of a menu of development options instead of one standard for all uses and all types of development. For example, a single-family dwelling, and I guess to back up for a moment, a lot of the existing zone districts, we wanted to limit any changes to those to not create any unexpected changes to neighborhoods and keep some stability in those, and for developers as well as not changing their entitlement or their zoning that they're expected to develop under. So we're introducing a few new zone districts that have some of these bigger changes. So the table is for the RMU2 zone district, which would be a new zone district, and so it allows for some of the smaller lot sizes, and there are some trade-offs for that in terms of when you're getting into the real small lot sizes, they need to be alley access to, otherwise it doesn't really function well from a street level perspective. Other trade-offs like detached sidewalks and higher design criteria. Another component that kind of ties into that last slide is the addition of vehicular access standards. So it gets into parking location and orientation. So again, is kind of a trade-off for some of the higher intensity, smaller lot sizes. Certain expectations that garages be set back from the street, as houses would be brought closer to the street with, it's actually, I guess, coincidental that this update is on this agenda right after the PUD, when they're proposing a lot of the same ideas that are in this code update of focusing on kind of more traditional neighborhood design, of trying to create a more inviting streetscape. So the new RMU2 zone I mentioned, It does allow for smaller lots. However, it does require additional open space and other enhanced features. And overall density would not generally increase as you're still tied to sewer capacity and other water capacity, things of that nature. Another new zone district, or excuse me, the SF2 we currently have, it's not used anywhere in town, so we're overhauling it to make it similar to the RMU2, but a lower intensity without commercial or apartments. So if people are wanting to do a little bit higher intensity, but not high-rise apartments, things like that. This is an example from Water Valley of some of their smaller lots that are, I think, range from 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. Something like that would be permissible. As I mentioned, the overall density wouldn't be changing as you're still tied to sewer capacity. The estate zones, we currently have 2, E1 and E2. There's really no need to have the 2 zones, so they'd be combined into one. The septic would still be prohibited for new development. Similar with the 2 multifamily zones, they don't serve a whole lot of purpose having the 2 different zone districts, so they'd be combined. A new zone district would be created that allows for agricultural use to continue on an annexed property. Currently, we don't really have any agricultural type zone, so we have to work with through the annexation agreement to allow farming and things like that to continue. So this will just be a more straightforward path if people want to annex but want to continue to farm for some time. A minor tweak to the setbacks for residential single family. Currently it's 5-foot rear setback. That's been identified as potentially problematic when if someone builds an addition 5 feet from your property line, especially a larger 2-story house addition, something like that can be kind of intrusive. So we've proposed increasing that to 10, and that is more consistent with what most jurisdictions have. We've tried to clarify exceptions for things like height and setback, so not requiring an ADA accessible handicap ramp to meet setbacks or go through a variance that would just automatically be allowed if you're in conformance with the condition of not being closer than 2 feet to the property line. Things like flagpoles, mailboxes, just calling those things out where the code doesn't really call them out now, just to provide more clarity to residents and to staff of how to handle those. And then similar for height exceptions, allowing things like chimneys, rooftop mechanical equipment to exceed the required height limits. The planned unit development code, also updating that section, really just with the intent of providing a little more clear standard for PUDs. The current PUD language is fairly dated, so just updating that to provide more clarity to staff, to you all, town board, in reviewing PUDs. Another fairly minor tweak that is just in response to occasional complaints we get with people, parking in a front lawn and on the lawn or on just having gravel front yard, and just can be kind of unsightly. So we receive complaints on that issue from time to time. So just adding stronger language that you need to be parking on a paved surface for the most part. You can have some supplemental gravel parking, but making sure those are adjacent to a driveway and not creating a nuisance for the neighborhood. Another tweak with the focus of downtown really trying to be on a retail-oriented, pedestrian-oriented environment. More automobile uses such as auto sales and service are not seen as compatible with that goal. And we've recently had Dutch Brothers, which was an auto sales, convert to another use, obviously, and Similarly with Pikes moving outside the CB zone, there aren't really any such uses currently in the downtown, so now we see now as an opportune time to simply eliminate automobile sales and service from the CB zone. So those are the changes, kind of high-level overview. Staff does recommend Planning Commission forward to Town Board a recommendation of approval. And that's all I have for you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Since this is the public hearing portion of the process, are there any questions, comments from the audience pertaining to this agenda item? Any comments, questions from the commission? Cindy?
Well, I was thinking there was a distinction between E1 and E2 in the old code related to being able to house animals. Is that not accurate?
There is, correct. We're proposing to simply, it's based really on the size of your lot. If you have enough acreage, you can have animals.
Okay, so by combining that, you're not creating a further limitation from what exists now?
Correct, yeah. It's really just how it's organized versus a change in the regulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Paul, wasn't the animals allowed specific to excluding some animals, like hogs?
Yeah, correct. And that's not changing.
Okay. So that still will be in place?
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair. I just think that going through here and cleaning this up, you know, and simplifying it a little bit better is gonna make it a lot easier for everybody down the line here. So I think it was a good move and good work to do that. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Second?
It's been moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Showerman, that we close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And motion carries unanimously. Move to the next agenda item by reconvening our regular meeting and move to agenda item 7, which is a recommendation to the town board for the land use code update. Any further questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I move we forward to the town board a recommendation for approval of the enclosed ordinance as stated by staff.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Foreman, that we forward to the town board a recommendation of approval of the enclosed ordinance from staff. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no. And the motion carries unanimously. Okay, communication from planning commission. Cindy, do you have anything?
No communications.
Mr. Foreman?
No communication.
Mr. Bushelman?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Talon?
No communications.
Ms. Hall?
No.
Communication from our town board liaison, David.
Nothing to report, sir. Thanks for the
Communications from staff, Paul?
I think you've heard enough from me tonight.
Well, I was gonna mention that, but I just thought I'd keep it quiet. Carly?
Just a couple things. On your agenda, it's noted the Transportation Master Plan will be going to the town board on March 23rd for action, so just letting you know that that's coming up. The code updates that you heard tonight will be on the town board agenda for Monday night. Also, I just received an invitation for a Northern Colorado housing meeting, and one of the topics, or the key topic, will be smaller residential lots. So if anyone's interested in attending that, I will send you the link. It is free this time, so I'll forward you that maybe later tonight.
Why don't you send me that link if you would?
Mhm.
Do it in the morning.
In the morning?
Yeah, I'm not gonna read it tonight.
Maybe.
Anything else, Carly?
That's all.
Okay. And the boss, you have anything?
Nothing tonight.
Okay,
Move to adjourn.
we are adjourned.